Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we could have your attention, please. We are continuing with our media availabilities for today. We are now joined by Matt Kenseth, driver of the number $20 General Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing. Matt won the All-Star race back in 2004 and has finished in the top 10 in the last 9 All-Star races. So Matt, can you just tell us a little bit about your outlook for this weekend?
Well, there's only about 20 cars in it, so top 10 is really not anything really to brag about. But yeah, I mean, we all like coming to Charlotte. It's a fun couple weeks being able to be part of the All-Star race, and then of course get ready for the 600. So it's a fun couple weeks. Looking forward to getting on track.
Okay, we'll now open it up for questions for Matt. If you have a question, please raise your name. We'll get a microphone to you and state your name and affiliation.
Raise your name.
Or sorry, raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Like this?
Just like that. We'll start up front with Tom.
I usually only pick on Carrie.
Hi, Matt. I don't even know how I follow that. Tom Jensen, FoxSports.com. What's the biggest challenge in this race for you as a driver?
Well, that's a great question. So, the race typically before has been pretty much straightforward. It's not a lot different than any other race necessarily. Obviously, qualifying has a twist to it. Getting on pit road is always very challenging, and getting your pit stall, faster than everybody else, and doing all that. That's always a big challenge in qualifying. So from a driver, qualifying is actually probably the most challenging. The race is just trying to get your car right, try to get the lead, and then try to have good restarts and try to figure out how to keep that lead.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Bob, and then over to Chris Knight.
Bob Pockris, ESPN. NASCAR's made a lot of tweaks to the rules in the last month, some stuff with brake ducts and now with the cooling fans and the experiment this week with the rear end housing. Do you feel that any of these changes are designed to kind of bring JGR back to the field? And whether you do or not, do you think that it could have that impact?
I don't think it really has anything to do with that. I think they're always trying to figure out how to make the racing better, and I think it feels like they try a lot of different things. Last year, 3 different aero packages, and it seemed like most people have been in favor of less downforce, and I think the racing's been good this year. I think there's been some really, really good finishes, and so I think they're just trying to keep going down that path, of reducing downforce and hopefully keep making racing better.
Okay, next question from Chris.
Chris Knight, CatchFence.com. Matt, to your left.
Yeah.
Hey, you had the opportunity to be on the cover of a NASCAR game. Pretty cool, interesting piece that they just had at the press conference. How big is that for the Toyota drivers in itself and you to be on the cover of a NASCAR game?
Well, I have a couple different thoughts about that. So, if we're lucky enough to win, obviously you want to win because it's $1 million, and it's cool that you're on the cover. But I'm a big Madden fan. I've always played Madden football, and everybody else talked about the Madden jinx, and the guy being on the cover had a terrible year the next year, and things didn't go so well for him. So if we don't win, we're not on the cover. I'm just going to say I did it on purpose because I didn't want the cover jinx.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Dustin.
So I got it covered either way. Get it covered?
Next question from Dustin, and then Lewis,
Sorry.
and then we'll go to the back.
Too much coffee.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Matt, last week with the restarts, NASCAR certainly seemed to call them even closer than what they had in the other series. You had your opportunities on the front row. I'm curious with how the way at least NASCAR reasserted itself in calling, in judging the restarts, how that impacts the gamesmanship that still goes on, or with the car beside you or the cars behind you, how that whole process has evolved if NASCAR continues to be as stringent as they were last weekend, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably affects the front row, more than anything. Once you get in trouble for things, it certainly, decreases everybody's willingness to try it and hope to get away from it, whether it's kicking your side in on pit road like we've seen a couple weeks ago. When you see that penalty, the rest of the team see that, and they're not going to do that anymore, So, I mean, I don't think you should ever make rules that you can't police, and, they have that rule on the restart, and they've got a lot of flack for not policing them, so now they're policing them. So, I mean, I'm okay with that. Yeah, they've been calling them really, really, really close, but I restarted second at least 2 or 3 times last weekend, and I knew that I could not start before the leader, and I could not beat him out of the box, and that's the way it should be. I mean, the leader, the leader used to have a big advantage before two wide restarts, right? He was starting up alongside a lap car. It was single file behind him and all that stuff. And now the advantage is, almost not there. And whatever advantage he does get and is allowed by the rules, he certainly should be allowed to keep that. So I am happy they're policing it, even though it's really tight. I'm glad they're policing it tight because that leader earned the right to restart the race. And in my opinion, the leader should have a clear lane and be able to take off when he wants in that zone and not worry about, defending from, somebody jumping and not doing it right and not getting a call and then losing that lead. So I mean, I'm glad they're calling them like that.
Okay. Next question to Lewis, then a few rows back, and then we'll go back up to Jim.
Louis Frank of Reuters. Did you make Carl Edwards pay for Matt Kenseth's Citizen watch?
I made him pay for his watch that he bought, but it's not the Matt Kenseth edition. Yeah. Citizen Watch has been a great sponsor of mine for about a decade, and they allow me to buy watches at cost, so I passed that cost on. But yeah, I made him pay for it. Why should I pay for his watch? Yeah, but then I had to buy him for all of them.
Okay, we'll take our next question.
But he did get it at half price.
David Exum, Independent Tribune. Matt, I know it's kind of early to be talking about the 600, but could you kind of talk about the endurance and the stamina you need to get through the race, and kind of how do you prepare physically, like for the race? And thank you.
Well, a lot of it really depends on the weather. If it's a really hot day, when the race starts, and obviously you lose a lot more fluids, and you got to be prepared for that. But really, I just try to, start hydrating early and try to eat right and try to get some sleep and just do all those things. The cars are pretty comfortable. They do a nice job of getting our seats to fit real good, and I mean, you're just in there a really long time. So, if it's hot out, you certainly need to pay a lot of attention. I've done a lot of work with Gatorade in the past on hydration and a little bit on nutrition and things like that. So really just try to keep up with that.
Okay, next question from Jim, and then we'll go over to Mike.
Jim Hunter, motorsport.com. Going back to the changes for this weekend, there's been a lot of talk by some people that teams are starting to get back much of the downforce that was taken away at the beginning of the season. I just wondered, from the driver's standpoint in the car, can you tell if that is the case?
That's, at least for me, that's hard for me to tell. I mean, I think that the teams, are always making everything better. If they make a rule to take away, 60 horsepower, a few years from now, you're going to have a chunk of that back, right? I mean, that's always research and development, whether that's, horsepower. The aero gains, it's hard to make much for gains because the rules are so tight. There's probably maybe a little bit here and there, but not a lot. But you're always, I think, making your cars better and making your engines better and all that within the rules that you're given. So, when they first make a rule change, that's always by far the biggest jump. Like when they did the tapered spacer in the engine and took out whatever that chunk was. That's the biggest chunk. You're going to get some of that back just from, testing and learning and developing new pieces.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Mike here in the middle.
Hey Matt, Mike Solarte, 10 Warner Cable News. It's obviously an honor and a privilege to run in the All-Star race, but with the format changes that you've seen, I mean, I don't know how many there have been in the time that you've been running this race, but would you guys as drivers prefer that they just kind of settle on one package, or are you okay with them kind of mixing it up with inversions and mandatory stops and that sort of thing, to just because it's the All-Star race and spice it up?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to win. I mean, that's the main thing, is I want to win. But right after that, I want what is the most exciting, for the fans and for the people tuning in and the people up in the grandstands, watching it, to put on a good show. I don't know what that is. I mean, the racer in me wants, wants the fastest car to win, and you want to figure out how to make your car the fastest and qualify in the pole and go up and lead every lap. That's what the racer in you wants. That's driving. But obviously, fans and the fan in me wants to see, close finishes and exciting races. Like last week, it was great to go back and rewatch it, but to be part of it, I would have much rather had my car driving better and have about a 20 car length lead and just hold it for the last 40 laps. I would have liked that a lot better, but that's not necessarily what the fans like. So it's a little dangerous at times to ask drivers, what they want as far as rules packages or formats and things like that, because we all want what's best for us.
Okay, next question from Jeff.
Jeff Gluck from USA Today. How do you see the final segment playing out? Is it impossible to tell until you know what the tire is going to do as far as wear, or do you have an idea of how the strategy might unfold?
Well, it's a different tire and aero package than what we had last year. I mean, you know, in a recent past, it's been pretty hard to pass here, and 15 laps isn't a lot of laps on your tires. So I don't know. I'm curious to see as much as everyone else. I think we might be a little bit optimistic with the number of laps and how big the invert is. You know, maybe could have done a pit stop a little bit earlier, so you have more laps on your tires. You know, for the guys that stay out, maybe a few less cars in the invert. But you know, we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting in that second segment to see what people do. You know, if everybody's going to be racing for the win, or if everybody's trying to race for 12th. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that and see how that works. So, so I don't know. It's certainly going to mix things up.
You're like 7, 8, maybe 6. You know, getting toward the end of that second segment, would it be worth dropping back to around 12 to just make sure that you can get a better shot at it?
You know, I don't know how it's going to go. And believe it or not, I've listened to people talk a lot about strategy. I haven't really, Jason and I haven't really, we've touched on it a little bit, but not a lot. And I could be totally wrong. I got to sit and watch it, but I think everybody's going to try to finish 12th in the second segment, and I think that's going to be very interesting. And I might be 100% wrong on that, but that's what it feels like today. You know, and especially after watching the last few races, you know, it's still really important to be out front, really important. And I don't know that 15 laps after a 10-minute break to cool them down on your tires is enough to be a huge deficit to 4 new ones. It might be. I hope it is, because it'll mix the field up a lot more, but I'm not really sure. I don't think anybody's sure until we see it.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Kelly, and then final question from Dustin.
Kelly Crandall from PopularSpeed.com. Matt, with the Dover win in your pocket, are you breathing a little bit easier, feeling like the black cloud from earlier this year is gone, or is it still just 1 week at a time?
You know, yes and no. I mean, it always feels good to win races. I will say that, you know, at least for me, the longer you're around, the older you get, the more races you've ran, all that stuff, I think you enjoy and appreciate the wins even more. I think it feels like every one I appreciate more than the one previous. So, you know, certainly the way our year's been, the way our year ended last year and everything, it felt really, really, really good to get that win for sure. But as far as what we do from here on out, it hasn't really changed, you know, my outlook or my goals or how we prepare or anything like that. I think you still go each and every week, try to bring your best stuff, try to put your best foot forward, do the best job you can do, and go out and compete.
Okay, final question from Dustin.
Matt, my guess is with how fast you've been this season that you probably haven't had many opportunities where you've run with Kyle Larson, because Larson's had his struggles at times. So my question is, with how he raced you, I know there was a lot of debate this week about, you know, how he did, or did he do the right thing. How does that, what did it mean to you with how he raced you? Did it change anything in your previous experiences with him? And what might it mean if there's ever a situation, a similar type of situation at some point down the road? How does that play into it?
Yeah, you know, I know a few people have talked about it, and you know, and I don't really, to be honest with you, totally understand why. I've been in this series for a long time. I've watched a lot of these races before I started racing it, and the amount of races where somebody just drives up behind somebody and clobbers them to win the race is few and far between. I think most people race with a lot more respect than that. So I think Kyle raced me exactly how he knew that I'd race him. I think he raced as hard as he possibly could. We had a little bit of contact in 2 even, and at a track that fast, that's not very forgiving. I thought we both raced as hard as we could, you know, for the win without wrecking each other or either one of us, and that's what I always thought racing was about. So I thought it was exciting. I sure heard from a lot of people that thought the racing was exciting and one of the more exciting races that they've seen, you know, in a long, long time. And you know, in my opinion, I think that's what the sport's all about.
That didn't change any opinion with how you
I already had a very high opinion of Kyle Larson. I think that you know, watching him and Chase go at it too was, after I went back and rewatched it, was really exciting to watch. Obviously, that's the future of the sport. You know, there's some good people coming in there, and I think as a driver and the race fan part of me, and somebody that cares a lot about the sport, that has done a lot for me, that makes me feel good that you see, people in the pipeline that are going to be there and be really competitive and put on good shows like that, for years to come. So, I have a high opinion of both those guys, and Ryan Blaney is awesome as well, and another second generation racer. So, it didn't change my opinion of him. Kyle is just tons and tons and tons of talent, and I think he's a quick learner, and you've seen him mature a lot the last couple of years, and he's gonna be one of those guys that once he busts through here, he's gonna win some races for sure.
Matt, thank you so much for your time today.
All right,
Good
you're
luck
welcome.
this weekend.